A special guest who knew about Anthony Richardson before all of us joins the show today, and he's going to tell us what he thinks of the Colts and their young quarterback. Let's get to it.
You are Locked On Colts, your daily Indianapolis Colts podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
All right. Thanks for tuning in and making us your first listen of the day. This is your daily podcast covering your Indianapolis Colts, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. And today's show is brought to you by FanDuel. Make every moment more. Right now, new customers, you guys get $150 in bonus bets with any winning $5 bet. Again, that's $150 with any winning $5 bet. So hop on, visit FanDuel.com/lockedon to get started today. What is up, everybody? I'm Jake Arthur of HorseshoeHuddle.com, your credentialed member of the Colts media, and we've got a very special guest today. The handsome rating is jumping through the roofs here. We've got he's the lead NFL draft analyst for Pro Football Focus, co-host of the NFL Stock Exchange podcast, along with Connor Rogers. It is Trevor Sikkema. What is up, buddy?
Jake, the handsome rating was already off the scale before I even got in the Zoom. So, I mean, that's not really saying anything. It's like, you know, it's like when Michael Jordan and then the guy who never plays combines for 60 points, but Michael Jordan has all the 60 points. That's the meme that we're doing here. But no, it's good to be with you, buddy. I'm very excited to talk a little bit Indianapolis Colts football with you.
Love that. Love that. No, yeah. Thanks for hopping on here. I know I speak for Zach as well. We are immensely proud of what you've gone on to do. I know we all go way back, and you are everywhere, buddy. It is awesome to see.
Thank you, man. I appreciate it. I just, honestly, I am fortunate that people give a crap what I think about football and sports in general. So anytime that somebody wants to talk a little bit of it, I'm always down to do it. So I appreciate it, man.
That's right. Well, we give a crap what you think about the Colts. That's what we're going to talk about today. Just kind of some general offseason stuff, and then the offense and defense. The Colts host their 3-day mandatory veteran minicamp this week, and then they're off until about the end of July. So we're about to have a very big break in Colts news for a bit. So we're going to go ahead and kind of put a bow on some of this offseason stuff. So I was going over some of your work lately, mainly focusing on the Colts side of it. And so you gave them a B+ grade, which I think is pretty good. And I'm sure the draft probably curved that a little bit because at least around here locally, it wasn't everyone's favorite offseason, mostly focusing on bringing their own players back, which
right.
You think about that, and it's they brought back a lot of marquee guys. They just happen to already be with the team, but only Flacco and Raekwon Davis from the outside. But a B+, that's pretty good. How did the draft factor into that? And did you like the Flacco and Davis moves?
Yeah, I mean, like I like those moves, but like you said, we went into this offseason knowing that Indianapolis, their main priority was bringing back the guys that they needed to bring back, and a lot of those contracts were going to be really important. And you know, for example, like I'm a Buccaneers fan. You know, I grew up just south of Tampa, and it was like the same thing in Tampa, right? I mean, like the team didn't look too much different, but it was seen as a massive success the offseason that they had because they brought back Baker Mayfield. They brought back Mike Evans. They brought back Levante David, right? And then they had a good draft as well. I think the Colts are in a similar spot where they bring back a lot of their own guys, and you got to do that some years. Sometimes you can really look outside of free agency and look at some new additions, but other times it's like, hey, you got to eat your vegetables, if you will, right? I mean, like sometimes it's not just the sexiest offseason, but you got to be able to retain the guys that you know are going to mean a lot to your team. I think that they were able to do that this offseason. And then the draft was huge for me, man. I really loved what the Colts were able to do this draft. Latu was my top edge rusher in the draft. So getting him, and you know, the Colts were in a situation where it was like, okay, we all were thinking, all right, it's wide receiver, it's cornerback for the Colts, maybe Brock Bowers. I wasn't even really thinking pass rusher in the first round. Like I was thinking, all right, maybe they might add it later in the draft. But the fact that Latu was still there, you looked at how successful that he has been over the last 2 years of getting after the quarterback at UCLA. You just really couldn't pass it up. And I love that that was their mentality there. So you jump on him, obviously getting a massive steal, and what I believe is a massive steal, I guess, in A.D. Mitchell in the second round. And I just think that their entire overall draft class, you know, the offensive line really played better last year, in my opinion, from years past when it was like, man, what's going on in Indianapolis? I thought this unit was supposed to be really great. Thought they took a step in the right direction last year. And then adding Matt Goncalves and Tanner Bordolini, like those are two really good offensive linemen who I think give you good depth and give you a lot of versatility there as well. So just all around, I think that's why I give it a B plus, because, all right, it's not in that A category because they're not like lighting the world on fire, but it's still something where every move along the way, I can't say it was anything less than my reaction being like, all right, good. I like that for Indianapolis. This is where they need to go. And so we'll see kind of how those moves really impact the early future for them as we see them kick off things in 2024.
Yeah, I love that analogy of eating your vegetables too, because, Michael Pittman Jr., if he was on the open market, he would have been, one of the top receivers. Same with Grover Stewart, Kenny Moore. So you brought in these big guys. They just happen to be your own guys. But I did think in terms of the draft, they did a good job of mixing immediate and, needs that they're going to have a year or two down the road. Latu, of course, it was a team that already had 51 sacks, but
right.
You can't really pass it up. And they had that unprecedented run of 14 offensive players in front of them. So, some of them could be viewed as luxury picks, but with AD Mitchell and Latu, it seems like there's a couple veterans in front of them that they might be kicking out of the way pretty soon to get on the field.
Yeah. And I'm looking this up because I just wrote about this. So yeah. Okay. So here we go. So Indianapolis tied for fourth in the NFL in sacks in 2023, but they were just 23rd in the NFL in total pressures generated, and they were 24th in pressure percentage. So it's like, yeah, obviously getting the quarterback down in the backfield is what you want, but there are other stats that kind of lead up to that talk about more regular disruption and just overall regular play-by-play success in the defensive line when it comes to like total pressures and pressure percentage. Those are two areas where Latu was huge the last 2 years with UCLA. So it wasn't just the sacks from Latu that we saw over the last couple of years. It's that constant pressure and production of winning his one-on-ones that's something where I love the fact that Indianapolis looked at their situation where they were like, hey, we're top 5 in sacks. And some GMs, some head coaches can just lean on that and be like, oh, see, like it's right there. That's a single statistic. But we know Chris Ballard kind of thinks beyond that. And I'm sure Chris dug into the numbers himself and was like, okay, we obviously had a great year converting those pressures into sacks, but it's not always going to be that favorable for us, where if we push up how many pressures we're getting, we push up how much we're winning with a guy like Latu, then obviously that becomes very advantageous. So I think that he can absolutely get on the field right away because of that and because of what he's bringing to the table there. And then AD Mitchell, this is a perfect player in my opinion. Truly, like I love Michael Pittman Jr. and what he could be as an X receiver. AD Mitchell, I love what he could be as a flanker, that off the line of scrimmage outside receiver. But I also think that he's got the size and the releases and the quickness to be able to play on the X if you want to get kind of creative with him, right? It doesn't just always have to be Michael Pittman Jr. And then I was a big fan of Josh Downs, man. I thought that they got a steal where they got him 2 years ago. I think he's a really good slot player. And so now all of a sudden, when you have Alec Pierce as well, you can throw him into the mix. Like it's just a really good, I think the pieces of the puzzle are all coming together, right? And you could see all of these guys complementing each other really well in Shane Steichen's offense. So yeah, younger guys. And obviously I don't think that Indianapolis is a bad team or a bad roster, but even for those young guys, especially those top 2 picks, players that you could see getting some playing time over the veterans that are already there.
Yeah, absolutely. Really well said. So here in a minute, we'll go ahead and we're going to talk more about that offense and those pieces coming together for Anthony Richardson. But first, we're going to hear from FanDuel. It's winner take all time in the NBA and NHL, and FanDuel is giving you a shot to bring home a big win of your own. Right now, new customers, you guys get $150 in bonus bets with any winning $5 bet. Again, that's $150 to bet on spreads, money lines, player props, and so much more. Right now, FanDuel's got the Celtics as 6.5-point favorites in Game 1 of the NBA Finals that starts on Thursday night. So make sure to hop on there and take care of that for yourself. Visit FanDuel.com/lockedon and make every playoff shot count. FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook. All right, so we are back talking offense and Anthony Richardson. So Trevor is a Florida alum, obviously pays very special attention to the Gators. So he was in on the Anthony Richardson stuff before any of us were. So obviously he was viewed as a very raw prospect who was going to have a ton of ground to make up as a rookie. I think he surprised plenty of people with, how far along and how ready he was. Like he probably rightfully was the starter going into last year. But what, compared to what you saw from him with the Gators to his rookie year, and then now moving into year 2 with what they've got around him, what's your general vibes on Anthony and what you're looking at for this year?
Yeah, look, I mean, I'm probably not going to tell you guys too much that you don't already know. I mean, he was a supreme talent, man. I even go back to that 2021 season where, I mean, he was really young for Florida, but it was Emory Jones who initially had the quarterback job, and yeah, Richardson just kind of came in sparingly. And it was just very evident that this guy was the future, right? I mean, like, it's just the ball rockets off of his wrist, just such supreme arm talent, an unreal athlete with his legs and just overall athletic ability and explosiveness for a player of his size. So, I mean, the talent is absolutely through the roof, but that 2021 season, okay, he doesn't play a lot. 2022 season is his 1 year as a starter. And I'm not going to be honest, or I'm going to be honest to Colts fans, I wish you guys didn't have him because I wish he would have stayed at Florida for another year because he might have been able to make a little bit of a run there in the SEC, because I did think that he probably needed another year before he went to the NFL, because no matter what, I felt like 2023 was always going to be a big learning year for him, whether it was him still at the University of Florida or whether it was in the NFL. If it was at UF, I think we would have seen a little bit more polish from him. But with it being his first year in the NFL, it was kind of like, okay, he went from first year as a full-time starter in college in the SEC, going through the learning curves of that, to then, okay, kind of the same thing at the NFL level. And he unfortunately didn't even get to play a full season because of the injury. So the injury obviously is something that you have to keep in mind. Not just the shoulder injury, but also the concussions as well, because both of those things are really important to note, because it's like, it's different than a high ankle sprain, right? I mean, like, when you have a shoulder injury that's such a major injury that you need to miss most of the year because of it, well, now all of a sudden, not only do you have to take care of it from kind of like how you're throwing, but think of the dual threat ability that Anthony Richardson brings to the table. When you are a dual threat quarterback, that invites taking hits, and concussions and then a shoulder injury obviously kind of go into those things where you got to protect yourself a little bit more. So it's just all things that you got to think about with him moving forward. But I will say this, I love him being in Indianapolis to get to learn under Shane Steichen, because last year, even though it was only just in flashes, and we figured that it would just be in flashes, we really just wanted to see those moments where it's like, okay, there it is. Like, let's see that play more often from Richardson. Just, I can put him in situations where it was like half field reads, it was 3-layer concepts, like it was things where he could very much simplify the offense to, and I don't mean that as an insulting way. You got to do this with all quarterbacks who are kind of like really learning how to play to their potential at the NFL level. He did such a great job of simplifying things to say, okay, this is what we're running. This is the concept that we're running here. You watch this player. If this player comes down, you're throwing it over top. If this player is deep, you're throwing it underneath. And it's just, those are things that not only allow you to see little pieces of defense a little bit better, it also gains your confidence, right? Because that's also an important part of playing quarterback at a young age that I don't think people take into account as seriously as they need to. If you ruin this guy's confidence, like year 1 or year 2, it doesn't matter how talented he is. He might just be in his own head for the rest of his career. You've got to be able to build these guys up. And I thought I saw really good moments of Steichen understanding that and building Anthony Richardson up to where even like right before he was getting hurt, man, he felt like he was kind of getting out a little bit of a roll there. So really excited to see him fully healthy this year. Love to see a fully healthy season from him. Let's get a full regular season in from Anthony Richardson and see what kind of growth and progression and some really good highlight plays we can get for him. So that's sort of how I see this situation here with AR in Indy.
Yeah, for the love of God, I think everyone here is just looking forward to having one young star quarterback that is actually around for like a couple of years and not riding the carousel of quarterbacks around here like they have been. So I was looking at your quarterback rankings for across the league. Now, Anthony is 24, which on the surface that looks low, but as you mentioned, he's barely played. He has the 4 games, but he's in your next generation clump, which I've got to imagine that means we have to wait and see on these guys, and they have a high ceiling. So when let's just say that Anthony plays 16, 17 games this year and you can see clear progress, where do you see him, like which echelon of the league in terms of quarterbacks, if he really starts to hit his potential?
Well, you know, I I hope people don't take this too far out of context, but there have been a lot of people who have been doing quarterback rankings this summer. And a lot of people, totally understandably so, I get it, have Josh Allen at 2 behind Patrick Mahomes. Because a lot of people just go, okay, well, it's Mahomes number 1. We're not going to have a conversation about this. It's obviously just Mahomes at the top. But then a lot of people, when they say, okay, well, who's next? Who would be the next quarterback? I didn't have Josh Allen in mind, but because I gave it to Lamar, who just is coming off MVP, and I gave 3 to Burrow just because Burrow is just an unbelievable assassin between the years. And like, Josh Allen's 4 to me. But if anybody who goes, Josh Allen's 2 for me, I go, all right, I get it 100%. Like, he's just such a unicorn in his talent. Anthony Richardson presents that ceiling. Like, he presents what you see from Josh Allen. Richardson gives you the ability to achieve all of those things as well. He has that rocket of an arm. He has that unbelievable athletic ability. He has the ability to really lower the shoulder and get those first downs with his legs. He can run QB power. He can run QB sneaks. He is somebody who's just a constant threat no matter what he is doing or no matter what the play design is. So the reason why a lot of people would have Josh Allen as like the number 2 quarterback in the NFL right now is an archetype of which Anthony Richardson is. And you cannot say that for many quarterbacks, if maybe any other ones at the NFL level, truly. So yeah, he's 24 in my rankings. But if we get a fully healthy year from him and he really starts to hit his stride, especially the second half of the season, I mean, you'll see people very easily move him up into top 15, maybe even top 12, depending on how good he plays. So it all just depends on what the success level looks like. But the second Richardson really starts to figure it out, you will watch people just skyrocket this guy up their quarterback rankings because he simply can do things that very few other quarterbacks, even at the NFL level, can do. And that's what makes him special.
I agree. I think he's got that blend of talent where once you start putting some highlights together, if the Colts are winning, like, he's going to become a really sexy thing across the whole NFL landscape if it's going well. So I totally agree. I expect people to start shooting him up their boards. Now, in terms of the Colts supporting cast and everything, they don't always get like a lot of notoriety. But when you look at it, it's really not bad. You know, you got Michael Pittman Jr. is a 100-catch guy, tough catches over the middle. Downs, obviously, a very dependable slot receiver from what we've seen through 1 year. But then, you know, you add A.D. Mitchell. You've got a really interesting tight end group they've got young, raw talent, but they have to stay healthy as well. And then the offensive line. And then, Jonathan Taylor's back. Mm-hmm. Like that, you got to think that's a pretty good potential offense, right? Is it just like a matter of health?
I think so. I mean, this is a really good unit, you know, there's just not a lot of areas on their offense, if any at all, where I'd really go, ooh, yeah, like that's a major issue for them. I mean, you just look at their receiver group. Are there receiver rooms with maybe higher ceilings around the NFL? Sure. But you mentioned Pittman, A.D. Mitchell, Josh Downs. You're now adding Anthony Gould. You've got Alec Pierce, right? Like you've got a lot of guys to like there. The offensive line, I mentioned, took a step up last year. Bernard Ryman played really well last season. Quentin's still Quentin. Obviously, they've got some veterans there on the right side of the line, but then you've got guys like Blake Freeland, who you recently drafted, Tanner Bortolini, who I think could play multiple spots along the interior offensive line. Matt Goncalves, like I said, is somebody who I think's got that left and right versatility to him. And I thought he was one of the more steady offensive line prospects before he got hurt this past year. Tight end room, sure, we had like first round projections for these guys, but it's a deep room and there's a lot of guys that you can throw to. And then of course you got Jonathan Taylor to hand the ball off to. And anytime that he is healthy, I mean, he is one of the most effective backs in the NFL. So to me, it's just a very, in my opinion, high floor offense. Like there's just not a lot of things, in my opinion, that would really hold this group back. And it feels to be a situation where, and this is exactly what you want to set your team up as, however big or long the next step or leap that Richardson is going to take this year, you have the team to be able to support it, right? It's not like, okay, well, Richardson's trying to take this leap this year. Like he's playing out of his mind, but now all of a sudden, like, the receivers just aren't as good as they should be. The offensive line just got 1 or 2 weak links in it. The running game's not quite what it needs to be to complement what he could do as a passer. Everything else to me is there. And so as high as Anthony Richardson can elevate his ceiling, or his, I should just say, production this past year, because we already know what the ceiling is, I think they have the rest of the group there to complement however high he wants to go, whatever that next step or leap looks like for him. And that is the ideal situation when you have a young quarterback. And I think Indy's done a good job of that.
Yeah, I think, again, as far as health works out, you at least know what you've got with him, by the end of the year, whether the trajectory is up or not. And you can be confident or, one way or the other. I think you're right. There's enough around there where you're not hamstringing him in one certain area. So coming up here in a second, we are going to talk about the flip side and the defensive side of the ball. Again, don't forget NBA Finals start Thursday night, Celtics and Mavericks. And Game Time makes getting NBA Finals tickets even faster and easier. Prices on the Game Time app actually go down the closer it gets to tip-off. With killer last-minute deals, all-in prices, views from your seat, and the lowest price guarantee, Game Time takes the guesswork out of buying NBA tickets. They got their last-minute deals. Save up to 60% off of buying last-minute for sports, concerts, comedy, theater, whatever. Zone deals, save even more when you choose a section, and then you let Game Time actually choose the seats for you. Seat views, which is critical and clutch because you don't want to show up and have the crappiest view in the spot. They give you a panoramic view from your seat in the app before you buy. And then they have the lowest price guarantee, or they will credit you 110% of the difference. Take the guesswork out of buying NBA Finals tickets with Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, and use code LOCKEDONNFL for $20 off of your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, create an account and redeem code LOCKEDONNFL for $20 off of your first purchase. Download Game Time today. Last minute tickets, lowest price guaranteed. All right, so we are talking defense now, Trevor. So this Colts unit, they've got some ground to make up. The offense had its bumps last year. Gardner Minshew was running the ship, but they had that streak of like 10 games or whatever it was, scoring 20-plus points. So, it was going good for a while offensively. On the defense, not so great rankings in terms of points against. The secondary was very young, had some issues with that. Like you mentioned with the sacks, they had a high sack count, but there were stretches of time where they could not buy a pressure against the quarterback. But when you look at it now, defensive line is even deeper now. You've got Latu. You've made a couple small additions, Raekwon Davis, Jonah Laulu. He's another one, late round pick, probably a practice squad guy. Some decent linebackers with Zaire Franklin and EJ Speed. Mm-hmm. And then they are running it back with that young secondary. They elected not to add any, big veterans to it, even though you kind of had that circled in red throughout the offseason saying, okay, they'll do something here. But right now it looks like it's going to be Juju Brinson and Kenny Moore as your top corners. And then there's going to be a battle with Jalen Jones and Dallas Flowers for the other outside spot. And then you got Julian Blackmon at strong safety. And then we guess Nick Cross at free safety. We really don't know yet. Mm-hmm. They're going to kind of let him and Rodney Thomas battle that out. And unless one of them is not up to the task, and then they have to find someone else to do it. So still definitely some questions on the defense that maybe don't exist on the offensive side of the ball.
Yeah, I think to me, it just comes down to that secondary. And I know that this is the conversation I think everybody's going to be having with Indianapolis, but that's the bet, right? I mean, you take bets in a lot of areas where it's like, okay, we're signing this guy, we're taking a bet. Okay, well, we're drafting this guy, we're taking a bet. Them not addressing secondary more than they did. And I'm not necessarily saying that they made the wrong decisions allocating their draft picks or money the way that they did, but that's the bet. In the salary cap era, you're not going to be able to just fix every problem. Most of the years, you're not going to be able to fix every problem. You kind of got to understand where your roster is at. And very clearly they said, hey, we've got a young secondary and we're going to bet on them to get better in 2024 because, like you said, defensive line I thought was good last year, right? I mean, especially I'm looking at some of their PFF grades, a lot of really high run defense grades from this unit too, right? I mean, I feel like they were really good at holding the line of scrimmage. Yeah, like you said, the individual one-on-one pressures weren't as good, but the sack total was at least there. You're adding Latu to that mix. I think that only gets better with how they're going to be able to get into the backfield. They've got those decent linebackers, those good athlete linebackers in the middle of the field, but then it's just secondary's got to play better. And I think that that's what it's going to come down to. And I guess unfortunately is the word that I'll use. Defense is such a cohesive unit. Even if the pass rush is good up front, the secondary is bad behind them. Sometimes you're just going to see some bad defensive numbers, bad points allowed, bad yards allowed, bad EPA per play allowed. And the vice versa can be true too. You could have a really great secondary, but if you can't get after the quarterback up front, then those numbers are going to be high. So it's unlike offense where you can sort of mask if you don't have elite talent in a certain position group or at a certain position just individually. Defense is very, very difficult to do that. So it's just going to come down to the defensive line played better last year. Latu is only going to make that better, in my opinion. But that secondary just has to step up. These young guys just have to take the lessons that they learned in 2023 and be able to apply it and be better in 2024. Because if they do that, again, I think that they've got the guys up front to be able to get after the quarterback and really disrupt things at the line of scrimmage and in the backfield. It's just about those guys in the back end really being able to capitalize on those plays.
Yeah, I agree. I think they're going to be really reliant on those guys all taking a step. So last thing before I let you go here, I'll put you on the spot. Did the Colts do enough to make it interesting in the AFC South? Because it was down to, the last couple minutes against the Texans in Week 18. Now I think the Texans are pretty comfortable favorites. So what do you think?
Yeah. I think the Texans should be the favorites. And obviously, Jacksonville is a team that you don't want to discount in any way, shape, or form either. Although Jacksonville just over the last 2 years has just been very up and down. The Colts are in that mix, if you ask me. I think the Houston's sort of the clear betting favorite, and they should be for how Stroud played last year. But I mean, let's face it, it was 1 year for Stroud. It's not like he's done this multiple years in a row. There could be a little bit of a regression just because in the NFL, even for the most talented quarterbacks, there's a little bit of an up and down because now that the league has a full year of tape on you, they can see your strengths, your weaknesses, things like that. You never know. So Houston should be the favorites for this division. But we've seen in years past, it is a competitive division in the AFC South. And it's just these teams lose games that they shouldn't lose. They win games that they shouldn't win. And it's just, I feel like that's the story of the AFC South. So to me, I think it is going to be especially if Anthony Richardson comes back and he's healthy and he's able to progress, this becomes a 3-horse division, a 3-horse race, if you will. The Titans, I am much lower on because I have more concerns about them in the trenches on both sides of the trenches. And obviously Levis has got to take a next step as well. So I'm not as confident in the Titans, although I don't think they're going to be a pushover. But I think that Indianapolis is certainly right there. To have the season that they had last year and losing AR as early as they did, for them to win 9 games, I think that that's a testament to who Shane Steichen is as a head coach and more of like, hey, a more fully healthy roster, an even better roster, I think, this year than it was last year. Why wouldn't you expect them to repeat that or get close? And you mentioned it was down to the wire for this division and for these teams last year. So I think it's going to be the same case this year. And I think Indianapolis is going to be right there.
I guess pretty fair. Yep. All right. So we'll hop off here. Trevor, real quick, where can people find you? We already got, for the people on YouTube, they can see your Twitter handle there, but where all can everybody find you?
Yeah, the Twitter handle is at Tampa Bay Trey. We're doing a lot of different, player and team ranking articles over at pff.com. We're also restarting the NFL Stock Exchange show on YouTube. If you guys want to go over to that channel and click subscribe, if you're an NFL draft fan, that's where you can do that. We're getting into summer scouting now. So we're looking at the 2025 NFL draft. We're looking at the upcoming college football season and giving you an early look at some of the future NFL draft players. And for Colts fans, maybe some future Colts as well. So come hang out with myself and Connor Rogers over at the NFL Stock Exchange podcast.
Yeah, but I see you guys are about to start quarterbacks next.
We are. Tonight? We're doing quarterbacks first and then running through the offense. And then we're getting to defense as well. We'll get to every single position. And we'll probably have, like 150, 175 guys that we'll talk about throughout the summer that you got to keep an eye on who should be a lot of the top 100 guys when it comes to the 2025 draft.
I love it. Starting off with a bang. All right. Well, thanks again, Trevor. Again, this was great. Thanks again for following us. Everybody, if you don't already, follow at Tampa Bay Trey, at Locked On Colts, at Jake Arthur NFL, and at ZachX2 on Twitter. Also, be sure to subscribe on YouTube here and the NFL Draft Exchange as well, wherever you guys listen to podcasts also. And we would love your guys' ratings and views, us and Trevor. And we will see you guys